Now, back to the Russian President Vladimir Putin's two-day visit to India, where he met Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I'm now joined by Dr. Shanthie D'Souza, founder and president of Mantraya Institute for Strategic Studies in Goa. Dr. Shanthie, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me this evening. I just want to begin with Putin. He arrived in India and was welcomed by Modi at the airport in Delhi, where they shared a warm hug and also a handshake. How has Putin's visit gone down in India itself?
It has gone down very well. India and Russia, as you know, have been traditional allies. And given the geopolitics and the difficulty in the relationship between India and US, I think Putin's visit was a welcome sign both for Prime Minister Modi, but also for the people in the country. So the optics which are generally reserved for the US president has been evident now with the Russian president. So, and across the party and broad spectrum, there is a huge public opinion in favor of Putin at the moment in India.
And the two world leaders held a joint media briefing a little bit earlier today where they agreed to expand and widen India-Russia trade agreements. What did Putin and Modi get out of those Delhi meetings? What did you think was most significant?
I think the most significant aspect is they avoided the difficulty in the relationship, particularly when it comes to the oil, the sanctions, and the defense deals. The trade agreement has been important because very little attention had been paid by India and Russia on the potential which exists in the two countries on trade. So definitely the agreement which was signed by Russia and India on economic cooperation program, critical minerals supply, pharmaceuticals, shipbuilding, civil nuclear energy, and whole lot of other areas which hadn't received the focus before. And I think the most important part is also the fact that they do intend to reach more than 100 billion US dollars by 2030 by following this 5-year economic framework. And I think that's significant and very important. There's also this talk of having more collaboration on the defense. But for me, I think the most important part is the economics, given the fact that Russia is facing sanctions and has been squeezed by sanctions, and India has been subjected to the tariffs by the US. So definitely trade and economics has become the centerpiece, which was not there before.
And Shanthie, President Putin said that Russia is ready to supply uninterrupted fuel to India. And this comes despite objection from President Donald Trump. As you said there, he's hit India with heavy sanctions, accusing them of helping them fund the Kremlin war machine. How much of a tightrope is Modi walking as he tries to keep Russia and the US happy, because he's also trying to reach a trade deal with the US? So it's a complicated situation for Modi himself.
Yeah, it is. And at this point of time, I think India is involved in a balancing act. And whatever the trade-offs which will come from the trade agreement with Russia, hopefully will cascade with the deal with the US. And I mean, though President Putin has made this promise of providing oil, and India had been buying oil, but has reduced because there is a certain bargain which is working with the US in the background. So I think it's a very delicate balancing act where India is trying to maintain its autonomy, but at the same time, strike a deal with both US and Russia in a way that benefits Indian policymakers. And for Putin, who's basically seen as a pariah because of the Ukraine war, and who himself is trying to reach out to the US and strike a deal in its own form, I think it's been a win-win situation for both of them in terms of the optics, in terms of the content, and the fact that they also had an informal dinner where they discussed a lot of other things, shows that I think the personalities and the optics behind this logic also leads to the fact that there is a US background which both the countries and the leaders are dealing with. So definitely for Prime Minister Modi, I think this has been a significant visit and achievement to show that India is involved in negotiations and is able to take position on issues in a changing world order.
And how does India fit into international peace efforts to end the war in Ukraine? Because we also saw Modi commenting on that. So is there a shift in geopolitical alliances that we're seeing at the moment, Shanthie, with this meeting?
Yes, I think so, because India had traditionally had a very strong and reliable relationship with the Soviet Union and then with Russia. But then post-liberalization, right from 2000, US started emerging as an important ally. And the fact that the Trump administration at this point has imposed tariffs on India has put India in a very difficult situation. And thereby there is a balancing going on. And also the fact that Prime Minister Modi has also talked about peace in Ukraine and to end the conflict in peaceful means itself shows that India is trying to play a larger role in bringing end to the conflict. And there are different modalities to do so. So I think the visit discussed a lot of these dynamics and a lot of issues which were important for both the countries. And the fact that there is the US and China factor, which plays out in different forums. And we're looking at an emerging multipolar world order. And these two countries are going to be very important. And thereby the allies and the relationship between the two has been cemented.
Shanthie, just one final thought before I do let you go. We talked about the US squeezing India when it comes to buying Russian fuel. Do you think Modi is pretty confident that they don't need to strike a deal with the US by having Putin in India to show him that the Indian economy is strong enough?
Well, I think India is definitely trying to diversify its economy and looking at new markets, and thereby Russia is important. But having said that, India has decreased the purchase of oil. But as you said, most of the countries, including US, which President Putin pointed out, is buying nuclear energy from Russia. Some European countries continue buying oil. So it's just not India which is buying oil. But India is definitely looking at reducing and looking at striking a deal with the US on this. So there's a bargain which is at play. And it depends on the whole host of factors which will play out at different dimensions of how this is going to evolve. But for the moment, I think it's been significant in terms of signaling to the United States and also to the rest of the world that the Russian president is welcome and will be a reliable partner for India. And the defense factor and the security deals which are going to come out of it will be also important to strike a bargain when it comes to the trade and tariffs which has been imposed by the US.
Dr. Shanthie D'Souza, it was really good to have you on the show. Thank you for your analysis of that India-Russia meeting.